The water bottle hit the gym floor with a hollow thud, rolling 3 feet before stopping against the base of the squat rack. Olivia Carter didn't bother to pick it up. She was too busy staring at the reflection in the mirror, watching her form collapse on the 5th rep of what should have been an easy set. Her shoulders burned, her breath came short, and somewhere behind her she could feel eyes tracking her struggle. Not judgment exactly, observation, clinical, professional, the kind of attention that made her skin prickle with irritation she couldn't quite name. She dropped the barbell onto the safety bars with more force than necessary. The clang echoed through the Tuesday afternoon quiet of Powerhouse Gym, drawing a few glances from the handful of people scattered across the weight floor. Olivia grabbed her towel and turned, deliberately avoiding the coaching station where Devon Wright stood with his tablet, presumably logging notes about members who actually wanted his help. She'd made it clear on day 1 that she wasn't one of them. She had a program. She had goals. She didn't need someone hovering, correcting, inserting themselves into her routine like she was incapable of reading a training app. If you're just discovering this channel, hit that subscribe button below. We're building a community of people who love real stories about unexpected connections, and I'd love to have you here. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Now, back to Olivia's story. Devon watched her leave without comment, the same way he had for 3 weeks. He'd learned early in his career that some clients announced themselves loudly. They came in with attitude, with walls, with a specific energy that said, "Don't." He respected it, mostly. Powerhouse attracted a certain type. People who wanted results, not hand-holding. People who treated the gym like a laboratory for self-improvement, clinical and private. But there was a difference between someone who knew what they were doing and someone who was quietly hurting themselves. Olivia's form had deteriorated over the past 10 days. Subtle things. A right shoulder hiking during overhead press. A knee tracking inward on her landing leg during box jumps. Small enough that most trainers would miss it. Significant enough that in another month she'd be dealing with an injury that would sideline her for weeks. He made a note on his tablet. Not a formal flag, not yet. Just a timestamp and an observation. Right shoulder compensation, squat rack 3, 14:22. He had a system for this. Documentation mattered. If she ever did ask for help, he'd have context. If she didn't, at least he'd covered himself professionally. Olivia shoved her water bottle into her gym bag with enough force to bend the plastic. She hated that she'd felt his eyes on her, hated more that she'd let it get under her skin enough to mess up her lift. This gym had been perfect for 2 months before Powerhouse hired new trainers in September. Quiet, no one bothering her, no forced small talk, just her program, and the methodical satisfaction of progressive overload. Then Devon had arrived with his clipboard and his watchful silence, and suddenly she felt observed in a way that made her want to snap. It wasn't personal. She told herself that every time the irritation flared, he was doing his job. He observed everyone. She'd seen him adjust a teenager's deadlift form with 2 sentences and a demonstration that probably saved the kid's back. She'd watched him spend 20 minutes talking an older man through a knee-friendly leg routine after the guy mentioned arthritis. Devon was good at what he did. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that Olivia had specifically chosen this gym for its lack of mandatory trainer interaction. The problem was that she had a system that worked, a routine that kept her sane, and she didn't need someone second-guessing her choices just because she didn't fit whatever profile he expected. The problem was that every time she caught his reflection in the mirror, calm and patient and professionally detached, she felt like a specimen under glass. She slung her bag over her shoulder and headed for the exit, passing the front desk, where Janine, the afternoon manager, was processing a new membership. The guy signing up looked young, maybe 22, bouncing on his heels with the kind of energy that suggested he'd watched too many fitness influencer videos. Janine caught Olivia's eye and smiled, a small gesture of commiseration that Olivia returned with a nod. At least Janine understood. Some people came to the gym to be social, others came to work. Outside, the October air hit her face, cool and sharp after the controlled climate inside. Olivia pulled out her phone and opened her notes app, scrolling to the training log she kept separate from any app or tracker. She liked writing it down, pen to paper, even if the paper was digital. It made the progress feel real. Today's entry was shorter than usual. Squat 385, failed set 3, shoulder fatigue? She stared at the question mark. Her shoulder had been tight for a week. Not painful exactly, just present. A low-grade awareness that hadn't been there in August. She closed the app and started walking toward the parking garage. Her apartment was 15 minutes away, traffic depending. She'd shower, eat the meal-prepped chicken and rice waiting in her fridge, and maybe spend an hour on her graphic design freelance work before bed. It was a good routine, predictable, controlled. The gym was supposed to be part of that control, not a source of tension. The parking garage was nearly empty at this hour. Olivia's car, a practical grey sedan that she'd bought used 3 years ago, sat in its usual spot on the 3rd level. She was 10 feet away when she noticed the front passenger tire, flat, completely flat. The rubber sagged against the concrete, deflated in a way that suggested something more than a slow leak. Perfect. She said it out loud, to no one, and felt the day's irritation crystallize into something sharper. She circled the car, checking the other tires. All fine, just the one. She crouched next to the wheel and spotted it immediately. A nail, thick and industrial, embedded deep in the tread. Not something you picked up by accident. Not unless you drove through a construction site, which she hadn't. Olivia stood and pulled out her phone. Roadside assistance. She had it through her insurance, though she'd never actually used it. The automated system put her on hold for 4 minutes before connecting her to a human who asked for her location, her policy number, and an estimate of how long she'd been waiting. "I just found it," Olivia said, keeping her voice level. "How long until someone can get here? We're showing high call volume for your area. Estimated arrival time is 90 to 120 minutes. 2 hours. Olivia thanked the representative and ended the call. She looked at the tire, then at the parking garage around her. She could wait in the car, except sitting in an underground garage for 2 hours sounded miserable. She could go back inside the gym, except the gym closed at 9 and it was already past 6. She could call a friend, except most of her friends were work acquaintances who lived across town, and asking someone to drive 30 minutes to keep her company while she waited for roadside assistance felt like an imposition she wasn't willing to make. She was halfway through composing a text to her sister when she heard footsteps echoing through the garage. She looked up and felt her stomach drop. Devon, gym bag slung over one shoulder, was walking toward the stairwell. He hadn't seen her yet. She had maybe 10 seconds to decide whether to pretend everything was fine or to acknowledge the situation. He spotted her before she could choose. His pace didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. Recognition, awareness. He altered his path slightly, angling toward her row of cars instead of continuing to the stairs. "Tire?" he asked when he was close enough. His voice was low, even, the same tone he used on the gym floor. No surprise, no concern, just a statement of observable fact. "Nail," Olivia said. She didn't elaborate. Devon nodded and crouched next to the wheel, examining it the same way she had. "That's deep. You call someone." "Roadside assistance. They said 2 hours." He stood, brushing his hands on his gym shorts. "You have a spare?" "Probably." Olivia unlocked the trunk and opened it. The spare was there, buried under a bag of old workout clothes she kept meaning to donate, and a box of design supplies from a client project 6 months ago. Devon didn't wait for permission. He shifted the boxes aside and pulled out the spare, checking the pressure with his palm. "This'll work," he said. "Jack?" Olivia stared at him. "I can wait for roadside." "You could." He located the jack and the tire iron in the side compartment of the trunk. "Or I can have this changed in 15 minutes and you can go home." It wasn't a challenge. It wasn't even an offer, not really. It was a statement of logistics, delivered with the same professional detachment he brought to everything. Olivia felt the refusal forming in her throat. She didn't need his help. She'd called roadside specifically to avoid needing anyone. But the thought of sitting in this garage for 2 hours waiting, while he'd already pulled out the jack and was positioning it under the car frame, made the refusal seem petty. "Fine," she said. "Thank you." Devon didn't respond. He was already loosening the lug nuts, working with the efficient economy of someone who'd done this enough times that it required no thought. Olivia stood to the side, arms crossed, watching. She should offer to help. She should at least hold something. But he had a rhythm, and interrupting it felt like it would slow him down more than assist. The silence stretched. Devon worked. Olivia watched. Somewhere above them, a car engine started, the sound muffled by concrete. The garage smelled like oil and exhaust, familiar and vaguely unpleasant. Olivia's shoulder ached. She rolled it experimentally, feeling the same tight pull she'd noticed during her workout. "You should get that looked at," Devon said, without looking up from the tire. Olivia's jaw tightened. "I'm fine." "Didn't say you weren't." He removed the flat tire and set it aside, reaching for the spare. "Just said you should get it looked at. I don't need advice." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Devon paused, glancing up at her for the first time since he'd started. His expression didn't change. No irritation, no defensiveness, just that same clinical observation. "Wasn't advice," was a statement. "Your right shoulder's been compensating for almost 2 weeks. You keep loading it the way you have been. You're looking at a rotator cuff strain inside a month. That's not advice. That's anatomy." Olivia felt heat rise in her face. "I have a program." "Didn't say you didn't." He fitted the spare onto the hub and started threading the lug nuts by hand. "Programs don't account for compensation patterns unless someone's watching for them. That's what trainers do. I'm not here for you." The sentence came out before she could stop it. The exact words she'd used 3 weeks ago when he'd approached her, after a workout, to mention he was available for form checks. She'd meant it then, she meant it now. But hearing it out loud, standing in a parking garage while he changed her tire, made it sound different, petty, childish. Devon tightened the lug nuts with the tire iron, working in a star pattern. "I know," he said. "You made that clear." He lowered the jack, removed it, and stood, wiping his hands on his shorts. "Spare's on. You'll want to get that nail repaired tomorrow. Spare's not rated for highway speeds." "I know how spares work." "Good." He picked up the flat tire and carried it to her trunk, setting it carefully inside. "Then you're all set." He closed the trunk, shouldered his gym bag, and walked toward the stairwell without another word. Olivia stood next to her car, keys in hand, watching him disappear through the door. She felt something complicated twist in her chest: gratitude, irritation, embarrassment. She got in her car and started the engine, the sound loud in the empty garage. The drive home was quiet. Olivia's mind kept replaying the conversation, picking at it like a loose thread. He'd helped her. She'd been rude. He'd responded with the same calm professionalism that irritated her in the first place. And underneath all of it was the uncomfortable awareness that he was right. Her shoulder was compensating. She'd noticed it herself. She'd just been ignoring it, because acknowledging it meant changing her program, which meant admitting she needed help, which meant asking him. Her apartment greeted her with silence. She dropped her gym bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and went straight to the bathroom. The shower was hot enough to hurt, and she stood under it longer than necessary, letting the water work at the knot in her shoulder. When she got out, she checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls. The evening stretched ahead, empty and predictable. She ate her meal prep at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her design project files without really seeing them. Her shoulder ached. Her pride ached worse. She thought about Devon's hands on the tire iron, efficient and sure. She thought about the way he'd looked at her when she'd snapped at him, like he was cataloguing another data point. She thought about the fact that she'd been going to that gym for 4 months and had successfully avoided meaningful interaction with everyone except Janine. And now Devon Wright had spent 15 minutes in a parking garage, fixing her car and telling her things she already knew but didn't want to hear. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. "Dinner next week? I want to hear about the new project." Olivia typed a response, something non-committal about checking her calendar. She wasn't in the mood to explain that the new project was stalled because her client kept changing requirements. She wasn't in the mood to explain anything. She opened her training log and stared at the entry from earlier. Shoulder fatigue. The question mark felt accusatory now. She knew what she should do. She should message Devon or catch him at the gym, or send an email through Powerhouse's website requesting a form check. She should be professional about it, She should acknowledge that he'd helped her twice in one evening, and that maybe, possibly, she'd been unfair in her assessment of his attention. She closed the app without adding anything. The rest of the week passed in careful avoidance. Olivia changed her gym schedule, coming in at noon instead of her usual 2 o'clock slot. Devon worked mornings and evenings, so the afternoon was a safe pocket of time where she could lift without observation. She got her tire repaired on Wednesday. She modified her program on Thursday, dropping overhead press entirely and replacing it with exercises that didn't aggravate her shoulder. By Friday, the tightness had eased slightly, which she took as validation that she'd made the right call. She told herself she wasn't hiding. She was adjusting. There was a difference. Saturday morning, Olivia woke to 17 missed calls from her sister and a voicemail that made her sit up in bed, heart suddenly racing. "Liv, it's me. Mom fell. She's okay. She's at County General, but you need to call me back. They're keeping her overnight for observation." The timestamp on the voicemail was 4 hours old. Olivia had silenced her phone before bed and forgotten to turn the ringer back on. She called her sister back immediately. The conversation was brief, information delivered in the clipped efficiency of controlled panic. Their mother had tripped on a loose rug at her house, fallen down 3 steps, and hit her head. No fractures, but a concussion and some bruising. The hospital wanted to monitor her for 24 hours. Olivia's sister, Jennifer, had been there since 1 in the morning and needed to go home to her kids. Could Olivia take over? "I'm leaving now," Olivia said. She threw on clothes, grabbed her wallet and keys, and was out the door in under 10 minutes. County General was 40 minutes across town, traffic depending. Saturday morning traffic was light. She made it in 35. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. Olivia found her mother's room on the 3rd floor, following the signs for the observation wing. Jennifer was sitting in the chair next to the bed, looking exhausted. Their mother was asleep, her face pale against the white pillow, a bandage visible at her hairline. "She's okay," Jennifer said immediately. "Doctors checked her every 2 hours. Neurologically, she's fine. They just want to make sure there's no delayed symptoms." Olivia nodded, her throat tight. She pulled a second chair over and sat. Jennifer stood, stretching. "I need to get home. Brad's got the kids, but he has to work at 2. Can you stay until they discharge her?" "Of course. Call me if anything changes. I'll have my phone." Jennifer left. Olivia sat in the quiet room, listening to the rhythmic beep of the monitor tracking her mother's vitals. She'd been here before, different wing, different circumstances. Their father had died in this hospital 6 years ago. Heart attack, sudden and massive. Olivia had been 23, still in college, still figuring out who she was supposed to be. The memory of that day was sharp and specific. The smell of floor cleaner, the sound of a code being called overhead. The moment the doctor had walked into the waiting room with an expression that told them everything before he said a word. She shook the thought away. This was different. Her mother was fine. Concussion. Observation. Routine. Her mother woke around 11. She was groggy but coherent, asking immediately where Jennifer was and whether someone had fed the cat. Olivia reassured her on both counts. They talked in fits and starts, her mother drifting in and out of wakefulness. A nurse came in to check vitals and ask standard questions: name, date, location. Her mother answered correctly, and the nurse made notes before leaving. "You don't have to stay," her mother said around noon. "I'm fine, sweetie. I'm staying." Olivia said it firmly enough that her mother didn't argue. The afternoon crawled. Olivia's phone died around 2. She'd forgotten to charge it overnight. The hospital had a vending machine on the 2nd floor, but leaving her mother alone felt wrong even for 5 minutes. She stayed in the chair, hungry and tired, and trying not to think about the last time she'd sat in a hospital room. They discharged her mother at 6. Clear neurological signs, no delayed symptoms, instructions to follow up with her primary care doctor within the week. Olivia helped her into the car, drove her home, made sure she was settled with food and medication and the cat fed. By the time she left, it was nearly 8. She was exhausted. Her shoulder ached. Her phone was still dead. She drove home on autopilot, pulled into her apartment building's parking lot, and realized she hadn't eaten since breakfast. The grocery store was closed. She had nothing in her fridge except meal prep she was too tired to heat up. There was a diner 2 blocks away that stayed open until midnight. She could walk there, get something hot and simple and walk back. It seemed manageable. The diner was half empty, the kind of place that survived on late-night regulars and hospital workers grabbing food between shifts. Olivia ordered a burger and fries at the counter, paid and slid into a booth by the window. She was staring at nothing, brain too tired to process thought, when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Small world. She turned. Devon Wright stood 2 feet away, holding a to-go bag and a coffee. He looked as surprised as she felt. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he gestured toward the empty seat across from her. "Mind if I sit? Place is packed." It wasn't. The diner had at least 6 empty booths, but something in his tone suggested he knew that and was offering her an out if she wanted it. Olivia surprised herself. "Go ahead." He sat, setting his coffee and bag on the table. "Long day." "Hospital," Olivia said. The word came out flat. "My mum, she's okay, concussion, they just discharged her." Devon's expression shifted, something warmer breaking through the professional mask. "That's rough. She doing all right?" "Yeah, tripped at home. Observation was precautionary." Olivia didn't know why she was telling him this. Maybe because she was too tired to keep up the walls. Maybe because he was there, and the alternative was sitting alone with her thoughts. Good that they kept her. Head injuries are nothing to mess with. He opened his to-go bag and pulled out a sandwich. "You eat yet?" Ordered, waiting. They sat in comfortable silence. Devon ate his sandwich. Olivia's burger arrived, and she ate mechanically, not tasting it. The diner hummed around them, quiet conversations and the clink of dishes. It felt strangely normal, neutral territory. Neither of them at the gym, neither of them in roles that required performance. "I'm sorry," Olivia said suddenly. The words surprised her as much as they seemed to surprise him. "For the parking garage, I was rude." Devon took a sip of his coffee. "You were direct, there's a difference." "I was rude," Olivia repeated. "You helped me and I snapped at you, that wasn't fair." He considered this, tilting his head slightly. "You want to know why I watch you?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "At the gym. You said you're not there for me. You made it clear you don't want help, but I still watch. You want to know why?" Olivia didn't answer. She wasn't sure she did want to know, but Devon continued anyway. "Because you're good," he said simply. "You know what you're doing. You have discipline. You show up, you work, you track your progress. Most people who come into that gym don't have half your consistency, but you're hurting yourself, and you're too stubborn to ask for help before it becomes a real problem. I watch because I've seen this pattern before. Someone with potential who's going to sideline themselves for 6 months because they waited too long to address something fixable." Olivia's throat felt tight. "I modified my program. I dropped overhead press." "Good, that'll help. But it's not addressing the root cause. You've got a mobility issue in your thoracic spine that's causing your shoulder to compensate. Drop the press. You're just transferring the problem to a different movement. Fix the mobility. You fix the pattern. And you could have told me this at the gym." "Could have. You would have ignored me." Devon's voice was matter-of-fact, no accusation in it. "You came to Powerhouse because it's a no-pressure environment. I respect that. I'm not trying to upsell you on training packages. I'm telling you, human to human, that you've got something fixable and you're choosing not to fix it." Olivia stared at him. There was no defensiveness in his posture, no ego, just honesty, direct and unvarnished. It disarmed her more effectively than any sales pitch could have. "If I asked," she said slowly, "would you help me fix it?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because that's my job, and because you're someone worth helping." He finished his sandwich and crumpled the wrapper. "But you'd have to actually ask. I'm not going to chase you." The silence that followed felt different, weighted. Olivia finished her burger, her mind turning over his words. Worth helping. As if that were a given, not something she needed to earn. She'd spent so much energy building walls, maintaining independence, proving she didn't need anyone, that the idea of someone offering help without strings felt foreign. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Devon nodded. "Fair enough." He stood collecting his trash. Get some rest. Hospital days are exhausting. He left. Olivia sat in the booth for another 10 minutes, staring at her empty plate. Then she paid her bill and walked back to her apartment, her mind quieter than it had been in weeks. Sunday she rested. Monday she went to the gym at her usual time. Devon was there, working with an older woman on a stretching routine. He glanced up when Olivia walked in, nodded once and went back to his client. Olivia sat up at the squat rack. She did her warm-up sets, feeling the familiar pull in her shoulder. On her third working set, she stopped mid-rep, racked the bar, and walked over to where Devon was wrapping up his session. She waited until the woman left. Then she looked at him directly. I need help with my shoulder. Devon pulled out his tablet. Okay, let's start with an assessment. I've got 20 minutes before my next client. They worked through a series of movements, arm raises, rotations, thoracic mobility tests. Devon asked questions, made observations, and occasionally adjusted her position with a light touch that was purely clinical. He didn't comment on the fact that she'd avoided him for a week. He didn't mention their conversation at the diner. He treated it like any other session, professional and focused. You were right, he said when they finished. Thoracic spine. You've got about 15 degrees less rotation on your right side than your left. That's forcing your shoulder to make up the difference. We can fix it with targeted mobility work. 3 times a week, 10 minutes. I can write it up for you if you want to do it on your own, or we can schedule a few sessions to make sure you're doing it correctly. Olivia hesitated. Asking for help once had taken effort. Committing to ongoing help felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But the alternative was continuing to hurt herself, slowly and stubbornly, until something gave. Sessions, she said. Twice a week if that works. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 o'clock? That works. Devon made a note on his tablet. We'll start tomorrow. In the meantime, ice your shoulder tonight. 20 minutes on, 20 off. I know how ice works. He smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him that wasn't professional neutrality. I'm sure you do. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm. Olivia came to the gym at 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Devon worked with her for 30 minutes, focused entirely on mobility and corrective exercises. It was tedious work, nothing glamorous, just incremental adjustments to how her body moved. But it was effective. By the second week, her shoulder pain had decreased noticeably. By the third week, she could perform overhead press without compensation. They didn't talk much during sessions. Devon explained exercises, corrected form, and documented progress. Olivia followed instructions and asked clarifying questions. It was professional, efficient, but something had shifted in the way they interacted. The irritation Olivia had felt before had faded, replaced by something closer to respect. Devon wasn't trying to fix her. He was giving her tools to fix herself. On the 4th week during their Thursday session, Devon mentioned that Powerhouse was hosting a charity event, a local community initiative, to provide free fitness assessments and basic training to underserved neighborhoods. They needed volunteers, trainers mostly, but also people to help with logistics, setup, registration. You interested? He asked. We could use someone detail-oriented. Olivia almost said no. Volunteering meant people, conversation, being social in a way that exhausted her. But she thought about her mother, alone in her house with a loose rug that could have killed her. She thought about the hospital, and the randomness of who got help and who didn't. She thought about Devon, who'd changed her tire without being asked, and helped her fix a problem she'd been too proud to acknowledge. Sure, she said. I can help. The charity event was scheduled for a Saturday in November, held at a community center in a neighborhood 40 minutes from Olivia's apartment. She arrived early, tasked with helping set up registration tables and organizing intake forms. The space was loud and chaotic, filled with trainers reviewing schedules and volunteers sorting equipment. Olivia found her station and focused on the task, grateful for something concrete to do. Devon arrived 20 minutes later, carrying boxes of resistance bands. He spotted Olivia and nodded, then got pulled into a conversation with the event organizer. Olivia watched him navigate the chaos with the same calm efficiency he brought to the gym floor. He answered questions, adjusted plans, and kept things moving without seeming rushed. It was impressive in a way she hadn't expected. The event started at 9. People began filtering in, families and individuals, some curious, some skeptical. Olivia processed registrations, taking names and explaining what the assessments would involve. It was repetitive work, but she found a groove. Around 11, a woman in her 50s approached the table, accompanied by a teenage girl who looked nervous. "Is this really free?" the woman asked. "Completely free," Olivia confirmed. "We're just here to provide basic fitness assessments and guidance. If you're interested in continuing with training, we can give you information about affordable options, but there's no pressure." The woman relaxed slightly. "My daughter wants to try volleyball. Her school has tryouts in January. She needs help getting stronger." Olivia smiled at the girl. "That's great. We've got trainers here who specialize in athletic conditioning. Let me get you set up with an assessment." She walked them over to Devon's station. He was finishing with another client, demonstrating a basic squat progression. When he saw Olivia, he gestured them over. Olivia introduced the mother and daughter, explained the situation, and stepped back. She watched Devon work. He talked to the girl directly, not the mother, asking about volleyball and what positions she wanted to play. He demonstrated movements, explained why certain exercises would help, and wrote down a simple program she could follow using minimal equipment. The girl's nervousness faded. She started asking questions, engaged in a way that suggested she'd found what she was looking for. When they finished, the mother thanked Devon profusely. He shook it off with his usual humility, redirecting credit to the organizers. Olivia walked the pair back to the registration table to give them resource materials. The girl looked at her mother and said, "I think I can do this." Something in Olivia's chest tightened. She thought about herself at that age, unsure and searching for footholds. She thought about how much effort it took to ask for help, and how rare it was to find someone who gave it without conditions. The event ran until 4. By the time they finished cleanup, Olivia was exhausted, her feet aching and her voice hoarse from talking. Devon approached her as she was folding the last registration table. "You were good today," he said. "People felt comfortable with you. I just took names. You did more than that. You made them feel welcome. That matters." Olivia didn't know how to respond to that. She focused on folding the table, snapping the legs into place. "Thanks for setting this up. It was a good thing to be part of. We're doing another one in February. You interested?" She looked at him. There was no pressure in the question, just an invitation. She thought about the girl with volleyball dreams, about her mother asking if help was really free, about the dozens of people who'd walked through those doors today, looking for something they didn't have access to otherwise. "Yeah," she said, "I'm interested." They loaded equipment into Devon's truck in the fading afternoon light. The community center emptied out around them, volunteers dispersing, the noise fading into quiet. Olivia's car was parked on the street 2 blocks away. Devon offered her a ride, but she declined. She wanted to walk. She needed the space to process the day. She was halfway to her car when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Devon was jogging to catch up, a folder in his hand. "You forgot this," he said, handing it to her. It was the volunteer packet with her schedule for the next event. "Thanks." She took it, tucking it under her arm. They stood on the sidewalk, the November wind sharp and cold. Devon shoved his hands in his pockets. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why'd you hate me when we met?" Olivia blinked. "I didn't hate you. You avoided me, snapped at me, made it clear I was an intrusion. That's not hate, but it's close." Olivia looked down at the folder in her hands. "You were watching me. I watch everyone. That's my job. I know, but it felt different with you, like you saw something I didn't want seen." "What was that?" She hesitated. The answer felt vulnerable, too honest. But he'd asked, and something about the day, about the tiredness and the satisfaction of having helped, made her willing to risk it. "That I needed help," she said quietly. "I spent a long time convincing myself I didn't need anyone, that I could figure everything out alone. And then you showed up and watched me compensate and knew exactly what was wrong, and it felt like being exposed, like you could see through all the things I told myself." Devon nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I didn't see weakness. I saw someone working hard and hurting themselves because they were too proud to ask for help. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? No. He said it with certainty. Weakness is giving up. Stubbornness is just fear wearing a different mask. You weren't weak. You were scared. And that's human. Olivia felt something shift in her chest. The words settled into a space she hadn't known was empty. She looked at Devon, really looked at him, and saw someone who understood more than she'd given him credit for. Someone who'd offered help without judgment, who'd been patient when she'd been defensive, who'd shown up today not because he had to, but because he cared about people who needed support. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on me." "I don't give up on people," Devon said, "not when they're worth the effort." They stood in the cold, the street lights flickering on around them. Olivia felt the weight of the day, the exhaustion, the small victories. She felt the pull of something new, something she hadn't let herself acknowledge until now. Interest, attraction, the kind that started slow and built in increments, rooted in respect and shared effort rather than flash. "I should go," she said, even though she didn't want to. "Yeah, get some rest. See you Tuesday?" Tuesday. She walked to her car, feeling his eyes on her back. Not observation this time. Something else. She drove home through the dark, her mind replaying the conversation. Worth the effort. She turned the phrase over, testing it. It had been years since she'd felt like someone saw her that way. Not as a project or a problem, but as someone whose growth mattered. The following week passed differently. Olivia found herself looking forward to Tuesday, to the mobility work that had felt tedious before. During their session, Devon mentioned he was working on a certification in sports rehabilitation. Olivia asked questions. They talked about his goals, about the gaps in traditional training that he wanted to address. It was the first real conversation they'd had outside of logistics and corrections. On Thursday, Olivia brought an extra coffee to the gym. She handed it to Devon before their session. He looked surprised, then amused. "Bribing me for lighter workouts?" "You wish. Black, no sugar, seemed like your speed." "Good guess." He took a sip and smiled. "Thanks." They worked through her mobility routine. Olivia's shoulder had full range now, no compensation. Devon documented the progress and adjusted her program, reintroducing movements she'd dropped weeks ago. "You're good to go back to your normal routine," he said. "Keep up the mobility work as a warm-up. But you don't need corrective sessions anymore." Olivia felt something like disappointment. "So we're done?" "With the corrective work, yeah, but you're welcome to book regular sessions if you want programming support." She didn't need programming support, they both knew it, but the thought of going back to her solitary routine, of losing the twice-weekly structure that had become something she looked forward to, felt wrong. "What if I just wanted to train with you?" she asked. The question came out more direct than she'd intended. Not corrective work, just training. Devon's expression shifted, something warmer breaking through. "I'd be open to that." "Tuesdays and Thursdays still work?" "Yeah, same time?" "Same time." They shook on it, and Olivia felt the shift solidify. This wasn't about fixing a problem anymore. It was about choosing to spend time together, choosing connection over isolation. Over the next month, their sessions evolved. They still trained, but the conversations expanded. Olivia learned that Devon had played college basketball before an ACL injury ended his athletic career. He'd gone into training as a way to stay connected to sports, to help other people avoid the mistakes he'd made. Olivia told him about her design work, about the satisfaction of building something from nothing, and the frustration of clients who didn't understand their own vision. They talked about family. Devon's parents had divorced when he was young. He'd grown up splitting time between two households, learning early how to read emotional currents and adapt to different expectations. It had made him observant in ways that served him well professionally, but left him guarded personally. Olivia talked about her father's death, about the way it had fractured her family in ways that still hadn't fully healed, about how she'd responded by building walls, by making herself need less. "You ever think about tearing them down?" Devon asked one Thursday in mid-December. They were cooling down after a heavy leg session, stretching on the mats near the windows. The gym was quiet, post-dinner lull before the evening crowd arrived. "The walls?" Olivia asked. Yeah, sometimes. It's easier to keep them up. Easier isn't always better. Olivia looked at him. You speaking from experience? Devon smiled a little rueful. Yeah, I spent years keeping people at arm's length. Told myself it was professionalism. Really, it was just safer. Easier to observe than to be observed. What changed? I got tired of being lonely. He said it simply. No self-pity. I realized I'd built this life where I helped everyone else connect and grow, and I'd left myself out of the equation. Didn't seem sustainable. Olivia sat with that, the honesty of it, the vulnerability. She thought about the past 2 months, about the shift from irritation to respect to something deeper, about the way her days had started revolving around Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, around the easy rhythm of training and conversation. I think I've been doing the same thing, she said quietly, keeping people out, telling myself it was independence. And now? Now I'm not sure I want to anymore. She met his eyes. At least not with everyone. The silence that followed felt charged. Devon held her gaze, something shifting in his expression. Then Janine's voice echoed from the front desk, calling his name, and the moment broke. He stood, offered Olivia a hand up. She took it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. I need to check on something, he said. See you Saturday. Saturday was the gym's holiday party, a casual gathering for members and staff. Olivia had planned to skip it, but Devon had mentioned he'd be there, and suddenly skipping seemed less appealing. Yeah, I'll be there. The party was low-key, held in Powerhouse's group fitness studio with folding tables of food and a playlist someone had spent too much time curating. Olivia arrived late, uncomfortable in social settings but willing to push through for an hour. She spotted Devon across the room talking to Janine and a few other trainers. He saw her and smiled, a real smile that made something in her chest flutter. She grabbed a plate of food and found a spot near the windows, content to observe. Devon made his way over eventually, carrying 2 cups of punch. He handed her one. Spiked or unspiked? Which one is this? Unspiked. I'm not trying to get you drunk at a work party. Smart. They stood together, watching the party unfold. Someone started a terrible karaoke version of a holiday song. A group of teenagers challenged each other to a plank competition. It was chaotic and earnest, the kind of event that only worked because people genuinely liked each other. You did good work today, Devon said, at the charity event, and with your training. You've come a long way since October. I had help, Olivia said, good help. You did the work. I just pointed you in the right direction. That's not nothing. Devon looked at her, his expression serious. Can I ask you something? Always. This, us, training together. Is that all you want it to be? Olivia's breath caught. The question hung between them, direct and vulnerable. She could deflect, she could play it safe, but playing it safe was what had left her isolated for so long. No, she said, it's not all I want. Good. Devon smiled, relief and something warmer flooding his face. Because I've been trying to figure out how to ask you out for 3 weeks without making it weird. You could have just asked. I didn't want to mess up what we had if you weren't interested. I'm interested, Olivia said. The words felt brave and terrifying and absolutely right. Very interested. They stood in the noise of the party, close enough that Olivia could feel the heat radiating from him. Devon reached out, his fingers brushing hers in a question. She laced her fingers through his, answering. Want to get out of here? He asked. Grab dinner somewhere quiet. Yes, they left together, stepping out into the December cold. Devon's truck was parked near the entrance. He opened the passenger door for her, a gesture that felt old-fashioned and sweet. They drove to a small Italian place Devon knew, tucked into a neighborhood Olivia had never explored. The restaurant was warm and dim, candles on every table, the smell of garlic and wine thick in the air. They ordered food and talked for hours. Real conversation, the kind that peeled back layers. Olivia told him about her father, about the shape of grief and how it had changed her. Devon talked about his injury, about the loss of identity that came with losing the thing he'd built his life around. They talked about fear and walls and the risk of letting people in. I don't want to rush this, Devon said over dessert. I want to do this right. What does right look like? Honest, patient, building something real instead of just reacting to chemistry. Olivia reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. I want that too. They finished dinner and drove back to Olivia's apartment. Devon walked her to her door, the streetlights casting long shadows. They stood in the threshold, neither wanting the night to end. I'll see you Tuesday, Olivia asked. Tuesday. And maybe before that, if you're free this weekend. I'm free. Devon leaned in, his hand coming up to cup her face. The kiss was slow and deliberate, nothing rushed, just warmth and intention. When they pulled apart, Olivia felt like something fundamental had shifted, like the walls she'd spent years building had finally come down, and the view on the other side was worth the risk. Good night, Olivia. Good night, Devon. She went inside and leaned against the door, smiling in the dark. Her phone buzzed. A text from Devon. Thanks for taking a chance on me. She typed back. Thanks for not giving up. Over the following months, they built something steady. They trained together. They went on dates, simple things like movies and farmers' markets and long walks through parks. They introduced each other to their worlds. Olivia met Devon's mother, a warm woman who clearly adored her son and approved of Olivia within 5 minutes of meeting her. Devon met Jennifer and the kids, charming them with his easy patience and willingness to play whatever game they invented. Olivia's mother recovered fully from her fall. Olivia helped her install new railings and remove the treacherous rug. During one visit, her mother pulled Olivia aside and asked about Devon. He makes you happy, she said. It wasn't a question. He does. Good. You deserve that. In February, they volunteered at the second charity event. This time, Olivia took the lead on organizing registration, while Devon handled assessments. They worked as a team, efficient and supportive, reading each other's rhythms in a way that felt natural. At the end of the day, cleaning up together, Devon pulled her close. I'm proud of you, he said. For what? For showing up, for doing the work, for letting people in. Olivia kissed him, right there in the middle of the community center with volunteers bustling around them. I'm proud of us. Yeah, me too. They drove home together. Olivia's car left in the lot to pick up the next day. At her apartment, they made dinner together, moving around the kitchen with the ease of people who'd learned each other's patterns. They ate on the couch, talking about the day, about the people they'd helped, about the next event already being planned. Later, lying in bed, Devon traced patterns on Olivia's shoulder. Remember when you told me you weren't there for me? I remember. I'm glad you changed your mind. Olivia turned to face him, her hand resting on his chest. I didn't change my mind. I just realized I'd been wrong about what I needed. I thought I needed independence. Turns out what I needed was someone who respected my independence and showed me it was okay to ask for help. You taught me something too. What's that? That walls aren't always about keeping people out. Sometimes they're about protecting something you're not ready to share yet. And that's okay. The right person will wait. They fell asleep tangled together, the city quiet outside the window. Olivia dreamed of gyms and community centers, of tire irons and mobility exercises, of all the small moments that had built into something neither of them had expected, but both had chosen. In the morning they went to Powerhouse together. It was Sunday, the gym crowded with weekend warriors. Olivia set up at the squat rack. Devon worked with clients nearby. Every so often their eyes met in the mirror, a private smile passing between them. Olivia loaded the bar and started her warm-up, her shoulder moving smoothly, no compensation, no pain. She thought about October, about the girl who'd been so determined to do everything alone. She thought about the man who'd been patient enough to wait for her walls to come down. She thought about how sometimes the thing you resist the most is the thing you need, how asking for help isn't weakness, how connection, when it's built on respect and honesty, is worth every risk. She finished her set and racked the bar. Devon appeared beside her, handing her a water bottle. Their fingers brushed. He winked. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. "Ready for your next set?" he asked. "Always," she said. And she was.